What is going on, investors? Back again. Finally, we're going to take a look at Square tonight. Ticker symbol SQ. This stock has had a massive run off its lows like most stocks made back in March. But unlike some stocks, this stock has absolutely been on fire. Take a look at the 52-week range. This stock was down at $32, and now it's in the after hours. We're up to 150. That is a whopping gain on this stock. It's up over 10% in the after hours after reporting earnings. We'll jump into these numbers, see what the heck investors are really excited about, and then can we really come over to this chart and pick a place where to buy? It almost looks like Apple stock or Amazon stock. This thing has been on a choo-choo train and it has been on full blast, and so trying to catch this one is going to be difficult. So let's jump into it. Again, in the after hours, this stock is up huge. We got a $60 billion market cap. No dividend, price to earnings ratio of over 200, but the market really loves what they have to see here. So let's jump into the numbers here. Most recent quarter here ended June 30th. We got 3 months ended here, 6 month ended here. We've got transaction-based revenue here actually went down in the quarter, went from 775 down to 682. And I think a lot of that is driven by they have a lot of small businesses that happen to be closed. Now, subscription and service-based revenue actually went the other direction. We went from $251 million up almost $100 million to $346 million. We'll dive into this subscription and service-based revenue here in a minute. I'll give you a little bit more detail on, I think, what investors have so excited about what's going on here. Hardware revenue, as we talked about on the last time we talked about this company, is a loss leader. You see they spent $28 million on hardware and they made $19 million. So they basically give this hardware away at a loss to drive this transaction-based revenue and maybe some of the service-based revenue as well. But you see on the transaction, we spent $388 to make $682. That's phenomenal. What has investors, I think, really excited is they grew this subscription model by nearly $100 million in the quarter, and take a look at the gross margins. Oh my goodness, they spent $60 million in the previous period to make $251. They spent even less. They spent $50 million to make $346. That is an absolute dream come true. Bitcoin revenue, as we talked about also on the previous call, this is not necessarily a loss leader for them, but a very low margin business. You see here, they spent $858 on Bitcoin to make $875. So relatively minor when you compare it to the subscription-based cost. As long as this subscription-based revenue, and we'll again jump into this in a minute, as long as this keeps growing like this with these types of, the margins are expanding. Absolutely phenomenal. That's what has investors so excited. We see here total cost of revenue is 1.3 on about, we'll call that $2 billion in revenue. We spent a 1.3. We're down to $600 million in gross profit. That compares very favorable to the previous period at 465. If you want to spread us out to a 6-month view, we got 862 in gross profit. And boom, it's up about we'll call that a little less than $300 million, up to $1.1 billion. This company has cracked the 1 billion mark for the 6-month period. And that really, really nice quarter here at 596. That's close to $600 million. Now, coming down to the net tax of all things, net loss down here, we're still losing money. Had a great quarter from the top line perspective, but you see they got product development costs here. We got sales and marketing. Look how much these are going up. Product development didn't go up that much, but sales and marketing actually went up a fair amount. General administrative went up about 30%. Transaction and loan losses is something we're keeping an eye on here. Ticked up in the period. And you stretch it back to 6 months, has really increased. So this is affecting Square a little bit, but this is more of a macro thing as well. That there's a lot of small businesses. I don't need to tell you this. There's a lot of small business out there struggling, and companies like Square who have exposure to them have to, provision these transaction and loan losses. And you see it's more than doubled over the last 6-month period. So they're really putting this in quite a bit. So that's driving down profits a little bit, but more than that is we're really driving up these costs. So it'll be interesting to see, can Square finally kind of normalize the S&M costs, the product development, the G&A costs? Can they start to flatten this out a little bit? Because then you'd really start to see some profits. Although if these expenses down here are really driving this top line, maybe they don't necessarily need to slow them down and start showing a profit on paper. You just like to see it turn the corner at some point. We lost 117 million. That compares negatively to the previous 6 months where we lost about 45 million. They are diluting you a little bit. We had 423 in the previous period. We're up to 440 in the most recent quarter. So how well capitalized is this company? Again, it's not making money, but the top line is growing very nicely. We'll take a look at cash flows here in a minute. But on the balance sheet, everything looks pretty darn good to me. We've got cash and cash equivalents ticked up about $900 million. Got to assume that's through some kind of financing raise. We'll take a look at that here in a second. They've got these investments in short-term debt securities. That also ticked up by, we'll call that about $200 million. So you got a shade over, we'll call that $2.6 billion. That's a lot of cash, and that gives this company a lot of runway and probably flexibility, not only on their balance sheet, but also with shareholders. When you're losing this much money over a 6-month period of time, when you got this much cash, it's not too big of a deal. So total assets here, we're coming in at about $7.8 billion. That compares very favorable to the beginning of the year here when we were at $4.5 billion. Again, some of these assets, though, are customer funds. You just want to keep that in mind when you're looking at these kind of payment processing companies or like a bank or something. It's on the asset side, but obviously if Square ran away with customer funds, I don't think people would be very happy. And I'm sure the SEC and maybe even the DOJ would be right behind them. Liabilities. So we'll take a look here. Long-term debt. We see about $600 million came from this long-term debt. We've got PPP liquidity facility advances. That's interesting. Maybe a little federal government, a little subsidy there. That may be for customers as well. May not necessarily be for the company as well. But I would guess most of this cash balance, it ticked up a little bit. We were at, we'll call it 1.5. Now we're at 2.6. So yeah, most of it came from this long-term debt. So they got about 1.7, call it 1.8 in debt, but they have 1.9 in straight cash, homie, and they've got these $700 million in short-term debt facilities. So not too bad. Again, the company's growing. This is a younger company. They're kind of disrupting. I guess you could say they're disrupting the payment processing space a little bit. Although they're kind of an entrenched player, in my opinion, at this point, especially with new small businesses. In the previous period, we had positive cash flow here, and now it turned negative. Actually, turned negative very rapidly. In fact, went from 165 positive. It's almost 100% decline here into 151 million. Obviously, though, investors don't care. The stock's up 10% after hours. So this stock, whenever you see, okay, this is negative, okay, but what I want you to understand when you watch this channel is figure out what investors want. Okay, some companies, I think like Amazon and maybe a couple other ones, they actually trade on cash flow. Investors actually really look at the cash flow. Obviously, investors don't give a darn about cash flow on this company. Okay, it's up 10% in the after hours, and cash flow went the other direction by almost a factor of 100%. But people don't care. Okay, so, I'm not saying you don't need to care, but for the most part, investors are not valuing the company on that basis. So net cash provided in financing activities, we saw here that they picked up about $1.3 billion in these proceeds from convertible notes, proceeds from issuing warrants, proceeds from PPP liquidity facility advances. So they're picking up some stuff on the financing side here. That's where the bulk of the cash came in the business. Now, here's, I think, probably the most important part. As we're coming down here to Cash App here. So we see the Cash App growth. So we see Cash App here went from, this is in the previous period. So this is previous year, 3 months ended right here, June 30th. Here's a 6-month view of Cash App ended June 30th of last year. Here's Cash App this year, June 30th. Here's the 6-month view. So here we go. Cash App over the last period went from 17 million up all the way to $53.7 million in transaction-based revenue. That's absolutely phenomenal. And even better than that, we've got the subscription and service-based revenue went from 118 all the way up to 271. And as we stretch it out to a 6-month view, we went from 32 million in Cash App revenue all the way up to 81, call it 81.5. And from the service base, we went from 215, boom, it like doubled all the way up to 464. So that to me is where the investor excitement here is in this, is you got this Cash App, which is a huge high margin business. It's not only the highest margin business that Square operates, but it's also the fastest growing. That combination is going to shoot your stock up just like we've seen. Now, where can you catch this stock? I don't know, guys. Honestly, your guess is as good as mine on this stock. It is completely on a runaway train here. It is I tried to draw a trend line in here. It is above that trend. Do you want to come in here and buy it? Do you close your eyes and buy this kind of stock? I guess you can if you want. If you want to be safe, can you come back and catch it back here at 134, 135? If you want to, and will it retrace back to this trend line? Remember, this trend line is going to keep going up, so eventually this trend line will be under the $130, $140 range. I'll let you to decide. This chart to me is a runaway train, and if you want exposure to Square, I have done this with stocks. Okay, I do it with Amazon almost every time I buy Amazon, although I've been able to get Amazon on these dips. And so I think that's what you wait for, is you either wait for Square to have some kind of dip, some kind of pullback. Maybe it's lower, maybe it's higher than where it is, but maybe you feel better like I do about buying on a dip. Or you do like I think when I initially opened my position in Amazon, it wasn't like a dip, and I've done it with Tesla as well. You just close your eyes and you buy. Okay, I'm not saying go overweight. If you have $1,000 portfolio, I wouldn't buy more than a share. I definitely wouldn't buy more than a share. On a $10,000 portfolio, it probably makes a little bit more sense. Maybe 2 shares, maybe 3 shares, probably max in that scenario. Obviously, on a dip, you might be able to get a little bit more aggressive. But this is a company that's firing on all cylinders and really reacting positively. I think investors also are looking forward to like some kind of turnaround where these businesses, we've got the seller here, that actually went down. We went from 758 to 628 on a more stretched out view. It's ticked down a little bit, but I think what's happening is investors are saying, well, that revenue is going to come back when stores reopen, things get quote unquote a little bit more back to normal, maybe 6 months, 12 months, maybe even 18, 24 months down the line. This is going to come back. And then you also have this Cash App that's accelerating even faster than it was before. So I think that's what has investors really excited about Square. Personally, you got a $60 billion valuation. It looks like to me, let's jump back in here. We got a $60 billion valuation, and we've got a 6 month. We can annualize this out. We'll give them credit for a little bit more too. We'll come up to $2.5 billion. So you're paying, 20, 25, we'll call it 25 times sales just on the market cap. You can compare that to PayPal if you want, which has in my eyes, Square and PayPal are as close to comparables as you possibly can get. In fact, I probably could have thrown them both in this video. But if you want some extended kind of learning and maybe get a little bit more out of this video and do some of this stuff yourself, I would jump into the PayPal and see what PayPal's trading at, like a times revenue number. You take PayPal's revenue and then see where it is in relation to their market cap. Square's pretty elevated up there, but again, they're growing this pretty quickly. I don't even know if PayPal's growing their Venmo app as quickly as this, and the margins are phenomenal. I mean, they went from 60 million to 251, 50 to 346. Guys, that's just absolutely phenomenal. You almost got to stand up and applaud for a management team here. They've done a very, very, very nice job. So there we go. There's Square. For a company that's not really churning out a profit, this is about as good as it can get. And for some of the older investors that might be tuning in, this might not make a lot of sense to you. But in today's market, when you're talking about this kind of growth, this kind of margin, and this kind of maybe future possibilities, the market is definitely paying out for that, and we're seeing that here with Square, not only in the regular session but certainly in the after hours as well. So there's Square. We'll be back again very soon with more videos. Hopefully you guys enjoy these. I'll be honest, In a couple weeks, things will slow down a little bit. We won't have as many companies reporting earnings. We'll probably get down to where we're doing a video a day. I might do a little bit more broader market type videos, a little bit more generalized videos, but obviously 3 months from now, we're back up into earnings seasons and we'll hit the ground running again. So thanks for everybody that has subscribed to the channel. I had 1,000 subscribers a couple months ago. Now I got 15,000. I want to thank all of you for helping me out with that. We'll be back again soon. Good luck with all your investments.